Okay, so as you know, we had to pause on our first half of Chapter 7 on questionnaire formulation, and that was because with the examples, invariably it was getting too long. So now we're doing the second part of Chapter 7 on questionnaire formulation. Easier said than done, obviously. But we're going to give you a few more examples, and then we're going to finalize by talking about the do's and don'ts. What is it that we should make sure absolutely is there when we develop the questionnaires for a survey, and what is it that we shouldn't do when we're doing that. Okay, so yeah, we'll be following up with these examples to come. Thank you. Okay, so here you can see that we're following up on previous questions, and interestingly, now you're going to the section where you're asking about the children who died, right? So how many boys have died and how many girls have died? And of course, as before, you fill in the blanks, right? Look how interesting here, and this is where we will see where we're saying further instructions. Now notice a couple of things. First, so before the interviewer will fill in, they will have looked and they will have read this, and so now you have another instruction. If none, record 00. Okay, so you don't leave it blank, you fill in with 00. Now look at it again. Very interesting. How different is this? This is all in capitals. So now you can see that all instructions for the enumerator, for the interviewer, is going to be in capitals. And see the following one. When you arrive at the following 207, you go to 208. Look at that. You have something that you're not going to ask the respondents. You're going to do yourself as an enumerator. So it says some answers to 203, 205, and 207, and enter total. If none, record 00. Okay? So here you have to fill it in. Now, this is something you will not ask your respondent. You will do the calculation yourself. Now, let's check the next one, 209, which says, aha, check 208. And so when you have 208, then just to make sure. So look at this. Is this question for the interviewer, enumerator? Yes or no? You should have the answer. It is. This is not for the enumerator. This is for the respondent. Why? Because it's not in capital. So it means you are asking that mother, for example, just to make sure that I have this right. You have had in total so many, say 7 or 6 or 5 births during your life. Is that correct? And look at this. You have yes or no. If you have yes, you can see the arrow that says, okay, continue. Okay, go to the flow is to the next question. But what happens if something happens here and you have, because you're going to ask this number, you're going to ask. You see, just to make, you have had in total this number of births, right? But if no, then something is wrong. So you have to go back again from 201 to 208, and you have to probe, and you have to see there is somewhere where there was a mistake. Either you, as an enumerator, calculated wrongly, or the person most likely did not include somebody who had died, or somebody who is not living with them and living somewhere else and did not include in the total numbers. Okay, very important. Okay, so now we are in this other part of the questionnaire. Look at it. You have section 6, child health and nutrition. So first, you can see that you're asking for a particular child. So what's the name of this? And of course, in order so you don't get confused, what was the there is a place where you will have the pregnancy history, the number. So you'll have a number here, again, 2 boxes. Now, we didn't include here, but there is a question that comes before this one, 616, and it's 615, and it says check, okay, in capital. So this is for the interviewer. And if there was any yes, so it means that 615 was already asking for some treatment for diarrhea. This is diarrhea in the child. And so if there was any previous or any other treatment, then there's a question that asks, was anything else given to treat that diarrhea? So as you can see, so that one can capture not only one thing, but more than one thing given for diarrhea. Now, of course, if you check on 616, you check on 615 and it says that all was responded no, or don't know. Your question is not going to be was anything else. It's going to be was anything given. So you see, the first time there was nothing, but the person maybe, this jolts, this makes the person remember that, oh yeah, there was something given, right, for the diarrhea. Now, look at it here again. If the person responds no or don't know a second time over, there's no sense in asking any more about treatment for diarrhea. So you have to skip to 618, which is not here. But only if there is this time over, there is yes, then you go to 617 and then you say check 615, and then you can see that the question, if there's any yes, the question is going to be what else was given. We look at the word else, which if it had been no in 615, you are not going to ask what else because there was nothing given before, but you're going to ask what was given to treat the diarrhea. You see? And here, look at the instruction again, and the instruction is you have to record all treatments given, capital, right? In capital. And here, look at it. Look at what we have. For the first time, you see not numbers here as coding for the answers, but now you see letters. So the interviewer, the enumerator, has it very clear every time they see numbers that it's more than one. Okay, so you can have, well, if by any chance there's only one, that's fine. But here you can put more than one because what? Because it's letters and not numbers. Now check another thing. When you have some replies, some answers, but there could be other things, because look at here, you can have home remedy, herbal medicines, but what if the person says no, there's none of this, it's a different thing? You have to ask, okay, specify. So this is the first time you see an open-ended response, which is you're given the chance that the response was not in the ones that was written already, and they already had a coding, in this case, not a number, but a letter, okay? And in this case, it would be an X, but this could be further, this could be subdivided into the many number. If there are several others, then you will have to create a code for each of the several others, okay? Now we have another type of question with answers. And here you'll see, I'm going to start by focusing on 1113. When you are changing the nature of your question, it's going to be clear to the respondent that they are not used because they were not being asked that way before. So here, look at what it is asking. It starts with a statement, not a question, that says many different factors can prevent women from getting medical advice or treatment for themselves. So you can see it's a declaration, it's a statement. When you are sick and want to get medical advice or treatment, is each of the following a big problem or not a big problem? Okay, so you are first setting the condition, or if you like, the context in which you're going to ask those four questions. And so you after this you say, oh, so is it a big problem or not a big problem getting permission to go to the doctor? And so you can see that you have as alternative answers binary, 1 or 2. So permission to go, 1 or 2. Is it a big problem or not a big problem? And what about getting money needed for advice or treatment? Is it a 1 or a 2? The distance to the health facility, 1, 2. Is it a big problem or not a big problem? Not wanting to go alone. So you can see that oftentimes you have to lay out very clearly what is it that you are going to ask immediately. Okay, here in 111 also we count 1 drink of alcohol as 1 can or bottle of beer, 1 glass of wine. So you are giving the example, and look at that, because you can add local examples too, all right, using the local expression. Okay, during the last 1 month, remember what we said? So you're asking here about some practice, something that the person did or didn't do, but you have to give a timeline during the last 1 month. It's not even the last month, it's the last 1 month, very clear. On how many days did you have at least 1 drink of alcohol? And you have already defined what is the drink of alcohol. But look at what it says following. It says, if not, this is in capitals, right? So the interviewer is not going to ask, it's going to read. And it's going to read a non-numeric answer, because the person might say, well, not too much, I don't drink much. So you probe to get an estimate. If respondent answers every day or almost every day, you code 95. Why? Because that's within the possibilities. So did not have even 1 drink is 0. So you put 0, 0. Okay, and of course, as you can see, there's a skip, so you don't need to fill the following. Here you put the number of days. And if the person says, well, every day almost, so not, this is not numeric, but at least the person say every day, almost every day, you put 95. Okay, so that's again one important distinction that the interviewer, the enumerator, needs to know exactly how to ask. And okay, another example where it's not a number in the response, but it's what? A letter, which means record all mentioned. Why? Because it's what type of health insurance are you covered by? And it could be that the person has 2 different types of health insurance. And now we have this questionnaire, this section that doesn't come from a demographic and health survey. This is another type of survey that we did in Morocco on the approach that teachers used for teaching, right? So it was either teacher-centered or learner-centered, etc. And here, then you have what we call more of an attitudinal type of questions, right? And here we are using something called a Likert scale, which is now we're going to organize the response from strongly disagree to strongly agree. So from 1 to 7, right? And so obviously the middle is a 4 here. And remember that we are adding also 98. In this case, they use 98 for don't know, because a person might genuinely say, well, I really don't know what what to answer here. And you have, for example, this is on the motivation section in this interview with teachers. And you have instructions, right? In this particular interview and questionnaire, they have not used, I would have used, for example, capitals here, because this is not something, but it's clear that you're not going to ask this to the respondent. This is what you are reading. But the question is, for example, the idea of using student-centered teaching practices appeals to me. So this is a chance for the person to say, I strongly agree. And of course, the uh, interviewer will be in the training, they will be asked. If the person says agree, you have to follow up by saying, so how strongly do you agree? Do you strongly or yeah, somewhat agree, somewhat disagree? So that you have to be very clear where are you going to put your response. Okay, so this you have to also give very clear the range, if you like, of their attitude, their motivation in the Likert scale. Okay, so this is just to show you another type of question more on the attitudinal aspects, because this would be ordinal. So I'm making an order. This obviously would be this would be obviously into the agreement, and here going into the disagreement. Okay, so that's another type. Very good. So after reviewing some of the most common types of questions, at least the ones that I have been more exposed, giving you some tips here. We're going to check quickly some do's and don'ts, so some things you should do and some things you shouldn't. So most important is that questions, most important for do's is the question has to be kept as simple as possible. I know sometimes you have to make that introduction, remember the declaration, so that a person can have a sense of what is it that you are asking, even sometimes the context. But keep it simple. If it's too convoluted, if it's too complicated, the person is going to say, or maybe, if they are honest, they will say, well, what? I don't understand. But remember bias. The person will not want to think that you are thinking that he or she is stupid or doesn't know, doesn't understand. So they're going to say, oh, yes, yes. And they didn't understand the question. Okay, very important. We mentioned that questions will have to be translated in not only the local language, but some of the examples have to be, if they call this drink, alcoholic drink, one specific way, then you can use that local expression. Okay. So another important comment I need to make is that there are so many questions already from the World Bank, from a number of surveys that have been done for more than 50 years now in the world, that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. If you go and Google and find out and do your research, you'll find that some of the questions have already been formulated, so you don't need to start afresh. Okay, use those and adapt. Of course, you can adapt, but you don't need to try and create something that is already there. Very important. You saw the question. There's a question on the children who are dead, not alive. There will be surveys where you're asking very sensitive things. Remember, they could be on gender, they could be on sex, sexual relations, intercourse. There could be many other things that are sensitive to people. So the way we do is they are usually kept towards the end, when the interviewer has created this thing called rapport, this relationship with the interviewee, with the respondent, and so you feel a little more daring that you can ask these somewhat difficult, sensitive questions. Okay, don't start when they don't even know you. Don't start with some of those sensitive questions. Okay. Okay, some of the don'ts, lots of don'ts. For example, we all know never ask a loaded question. If you're asking, don't you agree that it's better to be nice than not to be nice? Or isn't it true that this, once you start like that, you know that how people are going to answer. They are not going to want to object to you. Some people do, but the majority is going to say, oh yes, yes, exactly as you say, right? So don't ask loaded questions. And that's why when it's a tricky one, you even have questions that say, Some people think this way, this way, this way, while other people think this other way. Which of the two ways are you inclined to to think of, or that you feel more comfortable to think about? And so you've given the two extremes, right? Especially if it's tricky. So everything that reduces the bias, okay? Of course, don't ask more than you need, and you don't need to duplicate the question. Be careful, you have to always double check, unless you want to ask that question, the same thing, maybe in a different way, just to see if there is consistency or not in the way people answer. Then obviously sources of errors, sources of biases. The most important from a point of view of interviewers is when you have not trained them, because of course each one will ask their own way or interpret the question. The training, I mean, it's obviously mandatory. Very, very important that interviewers are never judgmental. So they have to be neutral, objective. If it's watching, observing something, or if it's getting the question back and it's not very clear, they should not, if it's not clear, they ask again. Don't over-interpret, don't misinterpret. Most important, don't assume. Assume is terrible in questionnaire and in surveys, okay, application and in surveys. Okay, if it's too long, there's fatigue, and here it works for both sides. If it's for the interviewer, gosh, they're spending an hour and a half, they don't want to ask, so they're going to skip, and then they're going to put, leave it, blank, and then you'll have to put 9 nines, or they're going to ask, in a quick way, and maybe not. So very important in part of the pilot testing, is it too long a questionnaire? Can you keep the person engaged, during this questionnaire application, okay? The worst that can happen, of course, for interviewers is corruption. And this has happened to me, in fact, even years ago. So maybe there's a reward, or simply the person wants to say, oh, I did twice as many questionnaires as you. And sometimes, once we found an interviewer sitting on a rock, and she was just answering away, and we discovered it because we had this that is called a sample verification. Once we had the questionnaires back, and somehow this person couldn't help repeating a few things herself, and then I realized this is not true, there's something wrong, and so we went, which tells you another thing. And we're going to do this when we talk about field work. You need supervision, like everything on performance, you need supervision, okay? But the respondent can also have, biases. Often, what I just mentioned, that they have something called socially desirable, social desirability. They're going to try and add, if they feel that you're judging, or they feel that they need to be smart, they're going to try and answer the way they expect you that they respond, and not the honest way. So at the very beginning, normally we have this way that we introduce ourselves when we are asking, and we're saying, I appreciate you're very candid, very honest. You are not going to be judged, even if that's part of the consent application. Even if you don't want to respond to it, that's fine. We can carry on, or you tell me when you don't want to answer questions anymore. So you open transparency as part of questionnaire application, okay? So remember, there could be very complicated questions that the person doesn't understand. So that's why even questionnaire formulation has to be pilot tested. You need to know if the question is too complex, that people are not going to get it, okay? So they can have fatigue. And so if you, as interviewer, are tired, remember, this woman or this person, they need to do some work, or they need to go back to the kitchen, or something is boiling, or whatever. You need to give the time for the person to resolve the thing, or Again, if it's too long, maybe the person will say yes, 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 so that you carry on quickly, and you don't want that. You don't want that to happen. Okay? So very important. That's why we will talk about, when we talk about field testing, we have to also to pilot test the questionnaire so that it is well done, well understood, well completed, so you have trust in the data you have collected. Okay, that's it for now. It's very interesting, a bit long, but on questionnaire formulation, easier said than done, but hopefully we made it a little easier for you. If so, then subscribe and follow every future. We still have some chapters of interesting monitoring and evaluation made easy for you. Thank you.